Welcome everybody, you're watching Mr. Fugu Data Science. We're doing some time series plotting. Today I had a viewer reach out to me, want a little bit of help. As always, feel free to get a hold of me here on Instagram and Twitter. If you think this is useful content, feel free to help support the channel with this provided here. As always, thanks to the recent subscribers and viewers, I greatly appreciate it. Let's get into this. Here's the data that we're going to be using today. It's a very famous data set for online retail sales from a website from 2010 to 2011. I left in the code the original data set because I have cleaned these data, as you can see here. All the code will be in the link in the description below from my GitHub. What we're going to focus on today is parsing the invoice dates, taking some of the country information, as well as using the unit price and a quantity and creating a new column called sales totals. When we parse these invoice dates, we will also be parsing this date time format, which is stored as a string initially, and we need to convert that to utilize this for our time series. I had to do a lot of conversion and manipulation with this data set. I highly suggest that you take this code and review what I did so you can get a lot of practice. Nevertheless, when you're dealing with pandas, you can zoom in just a little bit. You can do the to date time formatting as I have highlighted here for the invoice date column. Let's scroll over here and understand what I'm doing. I'm taking that column and I'm using the infer format equals true. Then I have to create two new columns called date and time, where I further subset, and I did dt.strf time and then the formatting that I wanted for each of those. But you're going to notice something. So let's scroll down. Here's our new columns, but the data types are now different than what the data type is when you have this invoice date. We're going to further take these dates and pull out the month name, the day of the week as well. And then later we will just take the hours. From there, I subset these data in day of the week, the month, and then I created that new column with our sales totals, the quantity, and the unit prices. When you're calling the day of the week, you use this %A. When you're taking the month name, it's going to be %B with this right here. If you notice, we now have our 3 additional columns that we just created right here, which is going to allow us to start doing our first plots. We're going to look at doing some simple plots first with 2 bar plots so we can get an idea of how to handle these data. In order to move further, you should check if there's any nan or none values for your date time, for instance. I then checked for null values in my column, so I have 0 null values, which is great, but there's some more hiccups we're going to stumble onto. So I subset these data, and I want to show you something distinctive. Notice that right here we're dealing with sales volume, and what I did was I took the specific 2 columns, the month and the sales total, and from there I subset and only did the month, and I did dot value counts. Now this is taking basically a volume count. I can't use this if I was looking at total sales. I would have to do a group by sum, so we'll see that in a second. This is allowing us to see that by month we had this many transactions, whereas when we do this one, we're actually finding the amount of sales by month. So I did a group by month. I summed it all together. You could do it by the mean. Just depends on what you're actually doing. And then I had to unstack, because what happens is, let me print this off for you so you know what I'm doing. There. If you see this is a nested table now. You see that this is above this month. So when you call it, you need to actually call this, which is the outer portion of it. So that's a distinction. And if you just wrap this in a list, it gives you just the actual values of what you're looking for. Now we do our actual first plotting. If you didn't have the imports from above, you would need this, where you just call in your matplotlib as our starter piece. I'm adjusting the figure size so it's quite big, but I'm going to make it smaller for the next plots because we won't be able to see them fully. Then I change the tick size for each axis, and I throw in the order of the labels I want on the x-axis in the particular order for the month. Then we use this plot bar to make our bar plot, where I'm calling in my labels as my x, my y values that we took from above, and then I'm aligning everything. And if you had multiple plots, then you could do the alpha so you have some kind of transparency so you can look between it if you had like overlaid plots. And then this is going to change the orientation of the x-axis ticks. All right, that's what's going on here. and then here's our label. And if you're wondering what this is, it's just using the actual symbol for the British pound. And then I increase the plot size text. So we scroll down, we could zoom out just a little bit, and this is going to be sales by month in British pounds. So you can see October, November right here are the best sales, and then for some reason March there's a great big spike. Now these data are interesting because it's from December 2010 until December 2011. And what I decided to do is look at day of the week for purchases. But there's a problem. There was never in the original data a Saturday. For some reason, these data, no one sold any items on this weird online website in I think it was the United Kingdom, because that's where most of the purchases came from. For some reason, they didn't operate or take orders on Saturday. I don't know why. So you have to take this into account when you're doing plotting. Sometimes your range of values don't work out and you have to find a way to finagle that. So in order for me to make this cohesive, I did the Monday through Friday, and I artificially made a new data frame that I'm going to create with the sales total of 0 and the new weekday as Saturday. And then I have to subset the original data that I'm taking from my data frame and append a new row of Saturday, which will go to the end of the data frame. And then what I'm doing here with ignore index is changing the index value for the data frame so it all starts from 0 again instead of the original values. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did above. We're going to take our data frame, we're going to group by the day of the week, sum everything together, and just take our total values for our sales for each day of the week. And you'll say, well, the magnitude of these numbers looks very different. Yes, they do. Okay, but if you look at these, if you sum all of these values together and check to see if it's equal for all the other days, you only be off by a few pennies or pence. Nevertheless, fixed everything, got it to 0. Now we do our next plot. This one's pretty much similar to the last one. We make a subplot here. We keep our giant plot. We change our X and Y tick sizes, but then we have this function right here. This function is taking care of the Y axis for the labels, and you're going to see what's going on in a second. But what's happening is it's taking care of the magnitude of the numbers. If it's 1,000, then it's going to get a K. If it's 1,000,000, it gets an M. If it's less than 1,000, it just is its own number, etc. And then I'm taking care of the amount of significant figures and only keeping one. From there, you're using this right here. This is called in from matplotlib, this function formatter, and it's taking in this function right here, this function, and it's setting it to the y-axis that we're calling, so we could change the labels. Then we're doing the same thing from above. We're calling our x and our y, so our label names for x, and then whatever we're subsetting for our y, aligning the plot, and then rotating our x ticks once again, and then doing our plot title and our y label, and then plot.show. So we'll scroll down and you notice, look at the y-axis right here. You have 250,000, 1 million, 2 million, $0, and it matches up for this Saturday. Now let's look at something. When you plot this originally, the 0 position would be over here because it wasn't aligned properly. And you scroll right back up here and we'll notice you see Saturday in this position. This is how it prints out. You'll put your labels and it'll say Monday through Friday in the correct order, but your plotting numbers here are in the incorrect order. That's why I did this line again here to subset everything in the correct order, so when I plot it, it lines up correctly. That's why now this lines up correctly. Now we're good to move on to our time series stuff. I decided for the time series we're going to investigate the top 5 countries. The first part we're going to neglect the United Kingdom because it dwarfs our data, and we'll look at that in the second example later because the scaling will be off. So what do we do here? We took our data frame here for our retail sales, and we're only extracting the country and the sales totals. Then I did a group by statement here so I can take the country and sum all of the values for our sales. And then I printed off 1 through 6, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, instead of 0, which would have been the UK, which was the highest selling. And this is what we're going to use for our first plot that we're going to use for mapping. Here's the UK. You see it's 3 times as big as the other ones pretty much. That's why it's kind of an issue. That's why we had to do a different subsetting for the sales. So what I did was I called those top countries that I wanted to take and do the dot index on the sales total so I can get the actual name of the countries. That's what this IDX stands for. From there, I'm going to chuck it into this and only subset the columns that relate to IDX, which is the names of these countries here. Then to verify it, you can run the same thing and then just do a .country.unique to make sure that this prints out correctly if you're in doubt. So it's a self-check help. From there, let's investigate this a little bit and take only the columns that we have of interest here. But let's figure out a range of dates that we want to look into. And if we notice the top, it was October, November, December were the top selling months. Let's investigate those first with these top 5 countries. So to do that, we use this right here. You call in your data frame, the specific column, and then a date range. And then I subset with whatever columns I wanted to do. Use this .idx, which is just getting the label names, and subset the countries by these dates. You could probably do this in different steps, but this is how I chose to do it. Then what I decided to do is take our date ranges and convert it into our date formatting. I iterated through the names for each one of these countries. And then what I did here was I basically appended a list for comparisons. This right here is saying create a list that's the same length as the set of values, which is these dates subtracted by the original dates for our data frame. And what you're getting from this set difference here is all the dates that were not included in this range, because what I want here is the range of every day in October. But I know from these data and investigating, for each one of these countries, the sales did not include all 31 days. So to make up for the difference in this, I did the set difference, then I multiplied our iterator here for the name of the country by the length of this, because we're creating a new data frame. So data frame will have the same length as whatever empty values we have for this. Then we create a list, a new list, which is our dates that were not included for our country, and then a length of zeros to correspond to the amount of sales that were held within each one of these dates that was not included in the original data frame. So I create this new data frame, and I have to use the explode from pandas to flatten out the data frame, because if we do this real quick, you'll see what's going on. You'll see here, each one of these is the specific length that we need, but we need to flatten it out to create more rows so we could append it to our old data frame. And that's what's going on here, okay? You'll see this. Oops. There. Now you see this. This is including the dates that weren't originally included in the data frame, and we're going to append them with the country name and 0 sales, so we can use this for our plotting. Then we need to iterate through each one of these countries and store their sales by date. So I'm taking in the data frame and I'm sorting by the country first, then by the date. Then I'm taking the unique names for each of the countries and iterating through it. Then I'm looping through basically the data frame for each one of these countries, and I'm taking the dates, I'm summing together all of their sales data, and we can see that right here. So this is the sales data for each one of the countries that we have, and then that's the list of lists. And then what I'm doing from here, we'll zoom in just a little bit for the plotting. You're going to do a list comprehension and basically take your data frame by the date column and take all the unique dates. That's going to be your X value. Then your Y is going to be the store list that I just printed off those right there. Then, same thing as before. We get our plot size, and you're doing an enumerate. So you're looping through this. You're taking your X, you're taking your Y, but now you have to make your labels coincide. So you're getting your country names, which are unique. So you have basically a set or a list of unique country names, and you make sure that it works with your iterator that you have from here. That's how you get it to match up for your legend. Then you do your same label information. We got a legend, dictate where you want it to be. Then you do your X ticks, rotate it, create its size, and you're doing it by date. And then I did a grid portion so you can see what this looks like. So we'll zoom out just some so we can see this because it's kind of big. But this is your October 2011 sales by country per day in Great British pounds. Right here are your countries. We did this by the date of the month. So we have all the months. You could do this by hours, by whatever you want. And we're doing this comparison. So this is what it looks like for all 5 of those countries. You can see there is definitely a trend of what's going on with sales. How about plotting a single day based on hourly? stuff. Okay, fine. This one involves quite a bit of manipulations because now we have to get the hour separated from the date time formatting. We're going to use our same date range that we did before, but instead I'm going to use the column of United Kingdom since this had a lot of sales. But I decided within that date range, I'm picking one particular day. Why did I choose this day? Because when you look up here from the 5th, it looks like there was a lot of traffic on the 5th for these countries. I could have did somewhere in this range or this range, but I chose to do it around the 5th. So we sort those values by the invoice date, this one. And I did that because you have a timestamp in here, which you can also sort by, which is what we want. After you do your sorting to get this in order by your timestamp information, you want to pluck out the hours, which is done here and highlighted. But there's another problem. You don't have 24 hours represented in these data. So now we have to manipulate and do the same finessing to create more rows and find the missing hours and append those in at the end of your data frame. So here's our hours here that we created. Now let's do the finessing. There's a lot going on with this one. I'm doing my date formatting so I could get all 24 hours. But to get the formatting, it's a 08 instead of an 8. So if I'm less than 10, I add that 0 into it and append it. Otherwise, I chuck in the values. So you get 01, 02, 03, and then at 10, it's just 10, 11, 12, etc. Then we got to do our set difference here. And this set difference is our new list of hours that were not included in the original data frame. Then you chuck that in and create a dictionary with your values as a list. And then we have to create the sales totals. There were 0 sales in that time, so you need to make the length of that new list of values the same as this, so your data frame will match up later. Then concatenate everything together so you have all of your columns. From there we do our plotting, same as what we've been doing before. Your X is going to be here, which is our unique hours. Then our Y is going to be this right here. So it looks crazy, but it's the actual sum of values for each hour of your sales. And then don't forget your X ticks, which is your hour names. And it's just the same as we've been doing before. So this is the UK sales for one particular day by hours. And this is what it looks like. And you see these that are at 0. Those are all the hours that were not included in the original dictionary. Now let's expand this and look at 3 consecutive days by hour for the UK data. This is quite involved. Very similar to what we did above for this previous plot. You subset the country that you want. You subset the date range that you want. Then you need to pluck out the hours that you want within your data frame. You need to sort by the values for your invoice date. That's what this highlighted portion is here. From there, we take all of the unique dates. There's only going to be 3 days, October 4th, 5th, and 6th. You iterate through those days and you append a list of the unique values for those names. You take those hours and you need to do a sorted list of your set difference, which is here. This set difference is going to give you all of the hours that were not involved in the original data set. You take that as a list of values here for your new hours. You will then have to expand this as a data frame because all of your rows will be a list. So you use the explode. You make sure to reset your index, and then now you're creating a sales total that's the same length as this that you're just creating here, so your data frames can be concatenated and joined together with the same number of rows. From there, we have to go through all of the days, iterate through that, and then we're taking all of the hours, taking the length of that set difference we did before, and multiplying it times all our unique names to get a list, a nested list of each date corresponding to the length of each of the 3 nested lists of hourly values. And then you just do the same thing of creating your data frames and mashing everything together. Let's see what this looks like right here for this DS, because that's the most confusing. You see what's going on? It's creating a list of the same length of all of these. You see there's 40 entries. From there, we will take our hours and our dates, iterate through our unique dates, which is 3, go inside of it and group by our hours and our sales so we can get a list. This is just the first entry in our list. There's 3 entries. And this is all of the sales for 24 hours from October 4th, 2011. The second entry would be October 5th. the third entry, October 6th. We do what we've done before, a list comprehension for our unique hour names to be our X value. We call in what I just showed you for that above, which is our Y. Then we got to do our iteration here, take our X, Y, and our labels to our unique date names, and make sure that you use this here so you get the correct indexing positions, and chuck in what we've done for the last few right here. And we'll scroll out. And this is going to be October 4th through 6th, 2011, UK sales by hour. And you'll see, here's our time series information, plotted out fine. You can manipulate this any way, but I made sure to laboriously go through this so you can understand. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you subscribe, turn on that notification bell. Feel free to help support this channel and buy me a coffee. There's my handle right here, Mr. Fugu Data Science. I would appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.